Hello and welcome again. What I want to talk about today is what is called the necessaries, and in the military concept that is all your clothing and gear and stuff that you would be issued by the military as far as the Continental Line and British military. And what I'm going to talk about is basically your stuff for your musket tools, stuff like that. So the first thing we're going to talk about, first thing on the list would be an oil bottle. I have a small brass one somewhere, but it's got a non-period top on it, and I couldn't find it earlier. But this is one out of my larger gun cleaning kit. This is barrel oil. You can see it's actually starting to solidify a little bit in the bottom. Does that when it gets a little chilled. It's actually good in cold temperature because it mostly will stay liquid. And barrel oil is a really good lubricant for your locks and stuff, and I like to use it for that. This is more for display, but the other thing I have a small bottle here. This is actually a small inkwell bottle, and if I needed to in the field I could use this or another small bottle. This is just as an example. I pulled that out of my writing desk. The next thing on the list is your worm, and I've looked around for about 3 hours today. I've got 2 worms for the muskets because you actually screw them onto the threaded tip of your ramrod, and like I said, I have 2 and I've not been able to find them. I don't use them that often when I'm cleaning guns. I have a range rod that I clean with when I'm at home, and sometimes at events I'll hide it in my tent and just bring it out to clean the guns real quick and then put it back, and it has a jag on it for whatever size I need, like this, to use cleaning patches with. But as an example of what one looks like, so this right here, it's just a piece that screws onto the ramrod, and it's got 2 prongs that come out, and I have one here. This one's for a rifle though, so it's set up different, but it's basically the same thing. This is just smaller for 50 caliber, and the one I have for the guns is a little bit bigger. And basically what you do is take your toe, work it in there till you've got a wad on there the size you need it, and just use it to scour the inside of your bore out. And I'm going to set that back here because we'll talk about that again later. And I am sorry that I could not find my worms, and it's kind of been upset because I've been looking for a few hours, and like I said, I don't use them very often, and I've only got 2. I think one may be in a cartridge box that I've loaned to a guy that's in our unit. Loaned him a musket in a cartridge box, and it may be in there along with my other British style turn screw. But anyway, the next thing on the list would be your turn screws, and I have some different styles here. This one here is just basically a blacksmith made one. You can find them, and it's basically a screwdriver blade with a vent pick, or you can also use that to run through a lot of the larger musket locks have a hole in them as well as the slot, and as you can see, that slot's kind of small, and it's hard to get a screwdriver that actually fits, and it's kind of awkward. It's easier to run that in and turn it and do that to get it out. And yes, I've got 2 shorter guns here I'm using for demonstration purposes. Now the British, like I said, this is you can pick these up at almost any event where there's people with blacksmithing and stuff. And I've got several of those. This right here is the British style, and some of them would actually be threaded down in this part so you could run your worm on there so you wouldn't lose it like the ones I did. And this one here has got more, it's more like a vent pick. Some of them will be flatter on the end to use as a punch to, if you needed to, and it's not something you should be doing in the field, but if you really had to, you could use that as a punch to push out the pins that hold the barrel in. And then it's got 2 blades of screwdriver blades, a bigger one, a smaller one. I don't really like the screwdriver blades on these. This one's not too bad. I've got two here that are the Pickering style. Like I said, that one is British. That style there is what the British were issuing, and I'm not sure if they actually adopted this during the Revolution or not. Timothy Pickering, I know he proposed this design, and here's another one here. This one's made from a file, and I like except the blades are pretty, they don't come to a point well enough they're pretty thick right in here. And for most of your screws, if you don't want to booger them up, you need a little recess on there. This one here has got a little bit better. I've used this one in the field to change flints and stuff. Actually on the go during the Battle of Camden, I pulled this out and used it. It has a nice hook. This one here particularly is stainless steel, where this one here is not really hardened. So if I used it to do like I did with that one, and that's why that one's all bent up, is I've used it to tighten the jaw screw on muskets, and it'll bend them. And these right here, a lot of this, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. So we go to the turn screws. Now here are some you might just carry with you. I have different sizes of hand forged turn screws, and I like the shape of this one. It's nice and thin, and that would probably be handy, except you really don't have a good place to hold on to it here, but you could put a stick in there to help turn it. So if I'm working on somebody else's gun and stuff, or even one of my own, I actually have some, and you wouldn't be required to carry these, but I set them here to talk about them. I do have some period style gunsmithing screwdrivers. These three here came in a set, and then I've got another set just like this. And I bought these from Crazy Crow, and they're not really that expensive. The only problem is they're not really hardened that well on the tip, so if you use them too hard to get a screw, it's really tight. See, that one there is boogered up, which is why I bought this other set, was because I boogered this one up. And I keep them in my gun cleaning box. And I have another one here that's really my favorite. And this one was made by my friend Donnie Ross. He made it from a piece of spring steel. It's got a nice taper to it, and it's small enough to get some of the smaller screws. I wouldn't use it like on the bigger lock screws, like these bigger screws, although this one's actually small enough it'll fit in there. That's the problem with some of these guns. You've got a nice big screw there, but the slot is so thin, something like this right here, it really won't fit in there good enough that when you start turning on it, it's going to slip and booger up your screw. That's why I don't like using those in the field. But this one here, and then it's small enough to get, like, to adjust other screws, and it's small enough to, well, here, let me go ahead and put this one in here. Right there, and that fits good. And we'll come back to those in a minute. But let me set this over here. And the other thing with that's what I didn't mention, with these here, the flat edge on this one and this one, and I guess you could do it with these, but it'd be a little bit harder because of the shape. But say your gun stops sparking really good, you can actually go ahead and tap the edge, and it's actually knocking chips off right here to resharpen the edge on that. And this particular flint is pretty big. That's either for a wall gun or for a cannon lock. Or what I do with them, because I bought a bunch from the Nepalese arsenal, and there was a handful of them that were really big like this. I saved them for my flint napping kit. I mean, fire starting kits, flint napping. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is the, they call it a hammer cap, but most people in reenacting, you'll hear them called hammer stalls. That's this little piece of leather thing. These two smaller ones are off some rifles I've got back here. This one's actually a period design, but most of the ones you will see, and you know, So you've got one long piece of leather instead of tying a thong to it like some of these. But what that is for is, let me get this one because the other one doesn't have one on there. You put this on there like that. So say you've got your gun loaded, you put that on there just in case. It's not going to go off half cocked. But if you accidentally cocked it or something, or if you leave that on there and pull the trigger, hold it up here, it's not going to spark. And that's basically what it's for. You can see it's scraped there. So that is a safety device to keep your gun from going off. And these are required. They used them. They weren't a requirement in the 18th century, but they were highly recommended by a lot of the drill manuals and stuff on both the British and the Continental line. So they highly recommend them, and we are required to use them as well as with a flash guard for a lot of reenactments. Okay, let me sit this back down here. Oh, no, I'll just keep it right here because the next thing we're going to talk about is the stoppers. So I've got several here. This one here is a wood tompion, and it's not quite big enough for this one. I actually bought it to use with my 62 calibers, and it's actually, I bought it at a Civil War event, so it's for a 58. When I first put it in there, it was loose, but since it's been sitting up and dried, you can see the legs are kind of starting to splay out a little bit where they've dried and kind of warped a little bit. So it now fits really good and tight in my 62 calibers. The other thing, one of the simplest things you can use as a stopper is a cork. And this one's been cut down. I actually cut it down for a bottle, but it actually works good on this right here too. Old wine bottle cork, you know, if you get one without any markings or anything, just trim it down till it fits. And the main reason we use these is because of rain. If you got your gun set up in a rack somewhere and it starts raining, you really don't want water going down your muzzle, which is this one here, and this is one of the simple ones too. You take your musket ball, and this one here I actually used a gun cleaning cloth, but it's in that book I had up here a minute ago. It says to use a piece of wool, but I just used a piece of cloth, tied it with a string, and it's in there tight enough that, you know, the bullet's not going to go down the bore, and you have a cloth there. Now it'll get wet, but it'll keep moisture from getting down in your bore of your gun, which is what it's designed for. And right there popped, it fits pretty tight. And that's basically, I mean, like I said, I made this one at Camden because we were there, I want to say it was probably 2023, and it rained the whole weekend. We were fighting in the rain. I was doing Continental Line, and I just happened to have some musket balls in there for a display because we don't take them on the field with us or anything. So I took and cut up some rags and made some for the guys and said, here, put this in your gun, just to keep them so they wouldn't fill up with water, and then we'd have trouble on the next day firing it. And one thing I didn't talk about, and it's actually further up on the list, is the pick and whisk. And I've got 3 examples here. This first one, and this has got a nice period wire chain, and it's just horsehair looped around a ring and then bound with brass wire to hold it together. And then you have a vent pick, and this one has the 2 loops further down. The other ones I'll show you are a little bit different. And then it has this here, you can stitch that onto the strap of your shooting bag or whatever. What I like though more is this style here, where you have a brass, I guess a yoke you would call it, with your chains. And this one has a brass tube with the horsehair pulled up in it. And this one's got a fairly heavy vent pick. But what I like about these is, now most of my bags and stuff have a pick and whisk attached to the bags. Like this one up here, it has one made with antler for a rifle. It's got a small powder measure, and it's deer antler with the horsehair, and then a wire pick and a small piece of deer antler, the tip of an antler. But with this yoke, you can hook it on your waistcoat button like that. So it's right there. It's always handy right there. I prefer them on a bag strap though, because I don't want to go around with this hanging on my belly all day. And then the third one, this one's actually, somebody's pressed it closed. This one, I took it off that bag that's right over there, and it was hooked through the brass loop. But this one has a turned horn piece with the horsehair attached into it. And you can use a turkey beard, boar bristle, several different things can be used for this. I actually have one here somewhere that somebody actually used wire in it. I don't like it because I don't want to scratch up the wood on my gun if I miss swipe. And this one here, like I said, it's been closed up to keep it on the ring on the bag. And this pick here is just a piece of brass wire. It's not even sharpened, but it is small enough to go right in the vent. And it's actually, the loop's been soldered closed so you don't lose it. Because I have had some vent picks actually fall off. And let me get this here. And I'll show you the difference why I like the thin wire vent picks, because you can see how far this one goes in. If I can see the hole there. It's going into where it's touching the sidewall there. This one here, that's a hand forged pick, and I've got a few of these, but I don't like them, and it's the same problem I have with some of these on those. If your vent is smaller, yeah, it'll clear a little bit in, but if I've got, like say the gun didn't go off, and I'm thinking something's blocking the vent, or if there was some oil or moisture down in there, I want to push that through to maybe hit some dry powder so the gun will go off with the next shot. But even like this one here, it's a little tight in some of these. Now some of my guns actually have, because I like to cone the touch hole out a little bit. It just makes them work a little bit better. And too, like my Jaeger, it's got a very large touch hole anyway. You see, I think this one, because this one's got a vent liner in it that takes a hex key. I don't know if you can see that there. I'll try and zoom in, and I think this one might actually work in that, except it's not bent. And that's another reason you'll see some they'll be bent, because then you can hook in if you have a flash guard there. See, that one fits in pretty good in that. And this one used to be bent more, but it ended up getting straighter. And this one's thinner on the end, so it actually will fit in there good if you have an issue with the gun not firing. And this straight one, like I said, with a flash guard in there, it's hard to use the straight one like that. Even though that's the period correct one, there again, most of the guns at that time would not have flash guards. Some would, but most of them didn't. That's why I like the hooked ones there. My own personal preference. And now that I've talked about all the stuff that were militarily required you to have, let's talk about if you were doing militia or you're just out hunting or with a rifle or something, you would have a little bit different stuff for a rifle gun over a musket, especially if you have a smaller, like 45 caliber or smaller. Like I said, I showed you this worm earlier. This one screws into the end of a ramrod if you've got a brass tip that's been bored and tapped to fit on that. This is a ball puller right here. And then I have a modern, you know, if you go buy stuff for Traditions or Thompson Center guns and stuff, you'll get something like that, and it's the same 1032 threads, because that's what a lot of them are at. But you can also get stuff like this is a modern breech face scraper. You put that on your gun, run it down in there and scrape it. And then again, this is a cleaning jag for, I think it's from a 62, and it has the threads on there. I do most, like I said, most of my cleaning and stuff, I will use a range rod. Another little interesting piece is this right here. And what this is, you've got a screwdriver blade here, but you also have this hole in it, and it's big enough that you can grab one here, and I'm not going to pull it out, but say your ramrod got stuck in there. If you have a wooden one with nothing on it, it's hard to get a hold of it. You can put this in there. The only thing is it will kind of booger it up, but you can wedge that in there and use it as a handle to pull it on out of there. And I have used it on a couple of times, and like I said, it's got a sharp edge, so it ends up cutting, grooving your ramrod. I may take and smooth that out a little bit. A few other things I usually carry, like I said, I've got a box that I carry tools and stuff in. A lot of this stuff stays in that box, which is why I'm perturbed about not finding my worm, because I know I had one in there. But a couple other things that I take in the field just in case I need them is I've got this pair of pliers that I bought at an event probably in 2003 or 4 when I first started doing this. I've had this pair a long time, and the one handle's kind of warped some, but I have used this to grab a ramrod and pull it out with the flat tongs there. It's not good for much else, but it's really handy to light your pipe, to pick up a hot ember out of the fire and touch it to your pipe. The other thing I carry, I picked this up at an antique store, and what it is actually a tool to crimp for like tinware, to crimp the seams or lay out the flat edge where you're going to solder your tinware together. And it's also, you can use it to grab a ramrod and pull it out, or just to hold stuff. A couple other things that I have that I usually carry with me in that box is a mainspring vise. I actually have 2 mainspring vices I keep in there. And I don't have a lock to actually show how to loosen that on a mainspring, but you put this, and this is for the mainspring inside the gun. Another one I got recently is this little one here, and I don't know how period correct it is, but it comes in handy, and this is something I'll use more in the field simply because, like this gun here, let me close that pan, if I was wanting to go ahead and put goes the other way, this little piece here, and one end's longer and shorter for different lengths of feather spring, and then it's got a little spot there for the swell where your screw goes in, and then you can tighten this. Let me turn this around, make sure y'all can see it. Tighten this one, and what it does is takes the pressure off. I'm going to go ahead and do that because it's getting hard to turn. I changed this to a smaller screw there, but anyway, it'll take that pressure off the so now I could take that screw out, and it's not going to have pressure on it from the spring if I wanted to put a flash guard on there or something like that, or if I needed to work on the frizzing for any reason. Get this back on. I'll take it off in a minute because I think, and now with the stuff that you require to carry, your cartridge box, not all the cartridge boxes are like this one, but you have a pocket on the front. You can slide that right in there, or you can pull your block out, because this one is a 36 round box. I found extra cartridges are really handy if you're in a hot pitched battle like we do at Camden and stuff. But you can also lay that in there. You can lay this in behind it like that. Put your block back in there, because also, well, that's not going to work like that. Because the other style of cartridge boxes I have that are more trapezoidal shape to fit in the pouch. I probably should have grabbed one of them. You have enough room in the box to put some of your tools underneath there. I like this one here with the little pouch on the front, because I usually will have a few flints stuck in there as well. And that's one thing it doesn't talk about, is carrying extra flints in that particular list that I was reading in that book. But so I think that's going to conclude things. So I appreciate you watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.